Jonathan George, welcome back to the show, man.
Man, so good to see you. I'm gonna pretend that we haven't talked for an hour leading up to this, man. Just had so much to catch up on, but good to see you, Justin.
Yeah, so to those listening, we this was scheduled for 2 o'clock for us to hit record. It's now 2:50. I hit record almost an hour in, but that's who Jonathan George is as a person. You've grown to become a great friend. You've been involved in a number of things that I've done, from virtual events to speaking to my mastermind when we were in Chicago, and getting to hang out till late at night, which is way beyond my character. And then beyond that, you coming and speaking at Growth Now Summit Live here, in September of this year. Like, it's just been a great it's been a great ride for me to get to know you as a friend, and also to see your growth. Last time you were on here, you were not an international bestseller. You are now. So let's talk
Woo-hoo.
about who Jonathan George is today, and then we'll break down how you got there. Let's talk about that growth.
Well, I have Unleash Your Rockstar. That's my personal branding agency, and we help entrepreneurs, CEOs, execs, really solopreneur type folks, coaches, to take their personal brand, build it, scale it, and to be able to scale whatever they're doing in life. So to be very successful, to really position them, and not I don't want to say position you as the go-to expert, but really just build such an attractive, I always say a sexy brand, like a sexy brand sales. And how do we take you and just make you be so attractive to the world that everybody wants what Justin has? And so that's what we really dive into. Our clients have over 150 million online followers and
Wow.
counting. I'm sure it's way more than that because I haven't counted in about 4 years, but the last time I checked was over 150 million. And it's not just about the followers, it's about the impact that you're making, the money that you're making, being able to scale whatever it is, to be able to create raving fans who want to support you and buy from you over and over again.
Yeah, and obviously just hearing that, I'm sure people know now why we're friends, right? When you talk about impact, when you talk about making a difference in people's lives, like, it starts with you. I think the beautiful thing that you do is you let people see their unique story as them being the rock star. A lot of people look at rock stars, look at celebrities, or look at these famous speakers, like, that have been on this podcast, people like Ed Milet, right? And they go, I can't be like that. But the reality is, it's their uniqueness that can make them be like that. Talk a little bit about where that came from for you, because I think a lot of times people don't see that light in themselves.
Well, my dad's a pastor, number one. So I've been helping people my entire life. So it's just one of those things it's inbred in me, but also like my heart. It's just naturally who I am, and it's just been nurtured through my entire life. But I moved to Los Angeles in 2000 to be a recording artist. I graduated with a vocal music ed. I was going to teach music. I got into to high school teaching, and I was like, nah, this is not for me. It was too stifling. It's like, I'm creative. I'm a hyper creative. I want people swinging from the chandeliers, and they're like, oh, calm it down, right? But so I moved out to Los Angeles. I was the grand champion winner on Ed McMahon's Next Big Star as a singer. And I had a record deal on the table. I had just released my first single, was working on my album, and the record label calls and they're like, we're not going through with the contract because they found out that I was gay. And it was, sitting there, and I understood. I understood because my dad's a preacher, you know what I mean? Like, I already knew, and people are like, wait, this couldn't happen. But this was 2000. Times
Yeah.
are way different now, right? Now it's like, cool, whatever. But back then it was such a massive issue. And my team tried to get me married. They tried to change my music. They tried to really change everything about me. And I was like, look at me. Like, why do you want to change everything? You know what I mean? Like, hey, but it made me feel like all I could hear was, you're not good enough. Something's wrong with you. Something is innately wrong with you. The world is not going to buy into you. And what I realized at that moment, that I had a choice to make: either lie to the world and follow this dream that I enjoyed, but like I didn't want to be a superstar for the sake of being a superstar. I want to impact people's lives from stage, right? And I just made a decision that I was like, I'm not going to lie to the world. I'm going to be authentically me, whatever that looks like. And I made it a vow to be able to help people rock their authentic selves and to be able to position all that they are into something that really is attractive to the world. And my story may not sound just like your story, but the thing that we all have in common, Justin, is that we all know what it feels like to not be seen, heard, and valued, to feel like we're not good enough. And in fact, according to Psychology Today, 85% of people struggle with not feeling good enough, have low self-esteem. And when you have low self-esteem, what happens is that you do not know how to go after what it is that you're passionate about in life. It's going to hold you back from your relationships, from professional relationships, personal relationships, and even uh, you know marriage and romantic relationships. And so, and it keeps you just from overall success in your life. And so my goal is for people to understand who they truly are, what lights them up, what is it that you really want, and then how do we position and shine a spotlight so brightly on that one thing that people are like, oh my God, this is the person, this is the rock star that we all want to follow. And so this is where, my journey, I just know what it feels like to not feel good enough, to not feel like I can't go after what I want to go after in life. And I don't want anyone to ever go through that.
So let's go back a little bit. Like those moments, like when they said, "Hey, because of who you are, we don't want you anymore." A lot of people have either not many people have heard that as directly as you, or as on big of a stage as you. But a lot of people feel that way every single day. So how can you begin to show up when you're saying to yourself, "I'm not enough"? Because that's the hard part, right? That the hard part is, how do I show up? How do I get on a stage? How do I start to share my story when I feel like my story's not good enough? I'm not pretty enough. I'm not good enough. Like, how can you begin that process of stepping out?
Well, one of the big things I started off in when I started developing people, I had an artist development company. So we developed all these singers, actors, and dancers and entertainers. And most every single person came in not feeling good enough. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter how incredibly talented of a singer you might be. Well, you look over at Susie and you're like, well, I don't look as good as Susie does. But Susie's looking over at Angelica saying, oh my God, I don't have Angelica's voice. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
we're all comparing ourselves. So the
sure.
first thing that has to happen is we have to build the foundation of who you are. What are your core values, your core talents? What are the things that are going to make you successful in all areas, no matter what it is that you're going after? And having the clarity of really what it is that you want, Justin, changes everything. If you're super clear, then you have a straight aim towards what it is that you're going after. And when you build out all the components that support that, you're it's like it lowers all of the noise going on in the outside world, all the noise in your head. I'm not good enough, or I'm not as good as that person, or why me? When we can build that out, that just drowns all that noise out. I show
Yeah.
up on stages all the time in spaces with like people who are huge, and I sit there, I'm like going, let me just kind of cower. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, no, no. Remember who you are and why you're here. And realize that if you're hiding who you are, if you're playing small, you're not only doing yourself a disservice, but you're also robbing the world of our blessings.
Mm, that's powerful. So I want to talk a little bit about how you worked in the music industry, because I it's so fascinating to me to see and pay attention to the music industry. One of my best friends was in the music industry, so I know a little bit about the back end of everything. I know he was in a boy band, and like one of the dudes in the boy band, they tried to hook him up with Miley Cyrus. This is like back in when she was starting to break out from the Disney Channel and all that stuff. He's like, I don't want
Yeah.
to date her. She's nuts. Right. Like, and so he just didn't go along with it, but they were doing all these things. And then I see people like Lady Gaga, Sam Smith, Lil Nas X, where when they came out, they were one person. Now there's somebody else. What's your take on that? Like, is who they have become who they truly are, or is that like a marketing ploy on the back end?
So this is the number one problem that we see with personal branding and people not really understanding the difference between a personal brand and a professional brand. So as an artist, who an artist is they're a creative first. They love that, and that creativity can come out, and they could also be a communicator. That just comes out through music, right? And
Hmm.
their music and their professional brand of Little Nas, even like I was watching a video of Tupac yesterday,
Yeah, the
and
super
Tupac
old
was like
video,
this
right?
all-American looking, you know, boy, good looking 17-year-old, just well spoken, and he's in the theater program. Well, as Tupac, what we know is this ghetto rapper that was a gangster.
Yeah.
That wasn't who he was. That was a professional brand of how they branded that professionally. But who Tupac was at his core and who he was as a kid and as a person, two separate things. So, I think that what we see every day is that, that's, and I'll tell you, what I learned quickly was that developing people and developing their personal brand as their business brand identity, right? They were a singer. What would happen is we would build them up, they'd have 1 million followers, but then they decide, hey, I want to be a doctor, or I want to have run a nonprofit organization, and all of a sudden we have this internal conflict happening, and people don't know how to show up in the world, right? So I like to keep it very separate. This is who you are as a person. This is your professional brand. There are two separate identities.
Yeah.
And with mental health being one of our most major issues in the world, this has got to be cleared up, or people are stressed out, they're overwhelmed, they don't know how to show up, they don't know whether to spray their hair, to spray their armpits. You know what I mean? There's like, they're just a mess. So we want to make sure that people are very solid on who they are outside of their professional being.
Yeah, and it's so true. Like, and it's fun to talk about these big names in the music industry and seeing that evolution. And obviously, Tupac being pre-internet, like you didn't see that pre-Tupac until now, right? It comes out of the archives, and people are like, "Who is this guy? Like, this is not the same person that we saw." But I see it all the time in the professional world. I see it with me, right? I go out on a stage and I'm very extroverted, and I'm Mr. Cheerleader, and I'm all these things. But behind the scenes, I'm introverted. I'm not always the one who's going to start a conversation. I'm more of a bruiser where I'm just going to tell you straight up how it really is versus rah rah and all these other things. But in the core values of what I talk about is always the same, right? So like, but I can't be the introverted person on a stage in order to make the impact. Is that the process you walk people through?
Yeah, knowing who you are, and this is and it's really funny. I just wrote an article for LinkedIn about introverts compared to extroverts, and people saying that, oh, extroverts are favored, and I'm like, actually, no. There's people don't understand how that actually works. It's where you get your energy from. Is being around people, does it drain you or does it excite you? Me, I get excited and I can stay up all night long because I'm with people. I am like on the extreme spectrum of an extrovert.
It's all that in
Now,
Chicago, by the way.
yeah, yeah, right. And so, and because I love being around people, but an introvert can run the gamut from somebody who's super quiet or to somebody who is loves being around people, has a great big personality, but can easily get drained and has to go recharge. My mother is an extrovert, but she doesn't say a whole lot. She just loves to be around people. She loves to be around the excitement. She's excited by that, but she's not going to be the one who's filling the space up with her voice. She's the supporter.
Mm,
So these are things that, like with a personal brand, you have to think about yourself as a whole person, holistically, and I mean WHOL, right? The whole person. What drives you? What makes you who you are? Understanding yourself in every aspect allows you to build a personal brand. A lot of times what we do is we compartmentalize ourselves in these little buckets of like, oh, I'm an extrovert, I am uh, I am this, I am that, but we don't understand how they all work together in a way that is so powerful, right? It's like having all the parts to an engine to a car, but we don't know how to connect them So therefore, it never takes off.
Yeah, and who do you feel needs a personal brand? Because I'm sure there's people listening and they're going, "I'm a CPA. What do I need a personal brand for?" Or, "Oh, I run a real estate agency. What do I need a personal brand for?" Like, it's not about me; it's about my business. Like, who is this message for?
Every single person needs to know their personal brand. I don't care who you are, who you think you are, who you want to become. You have to have a personal brand to be successful. And we live in a digital age. And whether you're dating on a dating app, you better know your personal brand. You better know what you want, what you're going after. If you're wondering why every date I show up on, it's not good, it doesn't this, it's because you're not clear on what it is that why you're there. You're not clear on what you want. You're not clear on what you're looking for. You have no clue what you're
Yeah.
standing for, right? So every single person needs a strong personal brand to be successful. And you look at even businesses. We've worked with a lot of businesses coming in and building the brands, personal brands of everyone in the company, because everybody needs to be a rock star. You cannot be successful. Your business can't be successful when Becky's over here in the corner, kind of scared to speak up because even though she's the most intelligent in the group, but she won't speak up because she doesn't have the confidence. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
you've got to build out, everybody's got to have a personal brand. And it's also, here's the other thing about personal branding is knowing what story to tell, to talk about, to connect with people. You know, it's really crazy. I'm the painter who doesn't paint his house. You know what I mean? We're all guilty of that. And so when I stepped out from the music business 7 years ago and kind of retired from the music side and the entertainment side to start working with entrepreneurs and CEOs, I had never worked on my own story
Mm.
ever. And I the story I shared with you about, losing my contract, I'd never shared that. And the last thing I ever wanted to talk about was being gay because it was the thing that seemed like always was holding me back in every career, everything I'd ever done,
Sure.
church to,
Yeah,
to
especially
my
growing up in
music.
a church.
Yeah. And so when you think about what's holding me back, I didn't want to share that story, but I had to work with someone to help me share my story in a way that I felt empowered and understood why I'm sharing it, to really be able to share my why. And so you take a real estate agent. Yesterday, I went and looked at properties all day with my real estate agent, and I asked her, I said, "Hey, I was like, what are you doing to connect with people, to get people to come work with you? Because it is an oversaturated market."
Yeah.
And she goes, "Well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that." I was like, "Okay, I want you to think about this." She was like, "Oh my God, I've never thought about sharing my story like that. I've never thought about like speaking on a stage to be able to speak to 40 ideal clients in the room. If you walk away with one, two clients, perfect, right? But it's learning how to share your story in a way that creates immediate trust, because it's not about what you do. It's about who you are while you're doing that. That draws people to you, to your business. At the end of the day, it's like, you're the podcast guy, right? And, it's like you have a package that helps people build their podcast to amplify it and to be able to monetize it. And so I could go to Justin or I could go to, Livia over here. Well, because I know your story, I know your why, I know who you are, and I've seen you speak from a stage and tell your story, I am automatically connected to you on a deeper cellular level. Livia, she has this great package, this great look over here. I'm going with Justin because I trust him.
Yeah, and it's so big too, and the importance of how you tell your story changes your audience, changes who you draw in. And I think that's the part when I started speaking I missed. Like I told my story, right? And I realized that all my followers had parents that were addicts and they were as lost and hopeless as I was. And that's not necessarily the people I wanted to impact, but it became an emotional tie. And then I really found out how to take my story, my own personal story, and make it literally where the person can plug and play into their own life, right?
Yeah.
Because we all have a struggle, we all have the things we have to overcome. That's the part people miss, right? Like, so talk a little bit about the importance of telling your story from a place of empowerment versus a place of for
Victimhood.
lack of a better term, lack, right? Because that's where I started, and obviously I'm not doing that now, and it's changed my life. But talk a little bit about that importance.
Well, funny thing is that I mean, most people have heard of Grant Cardone in the entrepreneur space, but Grant Cardone and Pete Vargas have the Great American Speak Off, and we're on our third season, and I judge that every year or all throughout the years. But it's people sharing their stories. And what I see over and over and over, and it's something I already knew, but something that I never really thought intentionally, was that people who tell their stories from a place of impact and clarity of why they're sharing it, making it about the audience, are the successful ones. People who are sharing their story to be able to just feel something good about themselves, or you have to change your positioning of why you're sharing that story. It has to be about the audience. It can never be about you. When I shared my story about not feeling good enough, it's not because I'm in a place of feeling like I'm not good enough. It's where I was, and it's why I am powerful and great at what I do. Your story has to make you ordinary and extraordinary.
Mm.
And it has to make people want to go further with you. And there's got to be a clear call to action of like, hey, this is how we can move forward together on whatever level that is.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, follow me on social media. Hey, here's my book. Here's what is that call to action? Or a simple call to action is like, I want you to take these three things and implement in your life today so that you can make a greater impact in the world. What is the call to action? And because you've got to make it about the audience, not about yourself.
For sure. And it's so funny. I used to think like, hey, I'm just here to make an impact. I don't want to sell anything. I don't want to offer something. But then I realized I left people hanging that needed more. I don't even want to say wanted more, that needed more from me. And so I look back now and go, how dare you not give somebody an opportunity to move forward and become the person that they should be and the person they're meant to be. I'm looking at my wall right now, which is no longer my background, and you're on the wall. And you were last time you were on the show, your episode
You throw darts at
272.
my head, Justin.
I could
Target
use this
practice.
wall as that. Some of these people on the wall have done me dirty since then, so it might not be the worst thing in the world. So I won't call anybody out, but people can speculate. You were, and it shows on the wall. It has the old episode numbers. You were episode 272 the last time you were on.
Wow.
You are now going to be episode 522. So there's been a lot of time that has passed. Now there's been times where I did 2 a week. It hasn't necessarily been that long weekly, but it's been years since you've been on the podcast now. And I see you continue to make an impact. You were doing it at a very successful rate. And now you've decided to double down and help people on a deeper level. You've written a book, you've come out with a workbook, you have an app to help people really kind of navigate their storytelling, to navigate their journey into becoming a rock star. Why did you decide to take this extra step in creating this book and all this material for people to move forward? Because you were already doing just fine before. What was the purpose behind the book?
Well, there's people there are overachievers. You and I are probably considered overachievers. People listening to your podcast are overachievers. They want to create something. And so those people are always kind of drawn to the product that I have. However, the world, when I read that, like within our youth and there's a 58% increase in anxiety, depression, and suicide. We have a pandemic in the world, mental health issues out the wazoo, and it's because of social media, number one, and this lack of connection and feeling like you're all alone. And people just don't know how to show up. They're comparing themselves to everybody on social media. And I'm like, hey, I know social media. I mean, been building brands on social media since MySpace,
Yeah.
you know? And I was like, what can I do to make a greater impact? And when you're building out a personal brand, of course, I'm building out, if you're in part of my agency, dude, you're like VIP, dude. We are working to blow you up and make you a powerful personal brand. But the rest of the world who doesn't know who they are, how can we take you and build you up so that you know how to show up confidently and powerfully in the world and intentionally in the world? because that's what we need everyone to do at this pace. Because let's face it, Justin, the younger generation are going to be running us in 20 years.
Yeah.
I need them to know who they are and why they're showing up in the world. So I wrote the book. It's really for anybody who's wanting to build self-confidence, self-awareness, know how to show up powerfully in the world. And of course, there's just tons. It's packed with personal branding tools, um, but it's just more on a generic level that's super powerful.
Yeah. I
I
love it,
wish I
man.
had this book. I wish I had these tools when I was a kid. It would have changed everything.
Do you know what I love about what you do? It's all and always been from a place of impact. And I've seen it, right? Like, so I'll tell the whole backstory. Like, you got pitched to me through a podcast pitching agency to be on my podcast the first time. I happen to know them. They're friends of mine. I normally don't take pitches. And I was like, this is a fascinating backstory. I'll have Jonathan on. A lot of times those things fall flat. You don't ever see them afterwards. You don't ever talk to them again. But because you're a person who's truly, although you want to get your message heard and you want to get it out there, it's only because you want to make an impact in the world. Same thing with the book, right? Like, hey, not everybody can afford my done for you service. Here's your guidebook to get to a place where you can build your own personal brand, to be a rock star, to make the impact you mean in the you mean to in the world, and you just put it into action. And I think a lot of people miss that, right? You've created great success in your life. And so I want to ask you a question. And I don't know if I asked this question on episode 272. I ask this every single time now, at least. It's a two-part question. So the first part is, what is your definition of success? And the second part is, what are three things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
So success to me is happiness. If I'm happy, it don't matter whether I'm making 200,000 or a million. My happiness is all there is. Um, and so I look at success as happiness and being fulfilled in four components, four major areas of my life, and that's mind, body, soul, spirit, and finances. And so just being in a happy place and having uh, well, let me say this is that so happiness is my definition. And I really do, even in the book, I talk about it in detail about I think everyone's word for success should be happiness. I don't care who you are.
Oh,
Fulfillment, right? And so every day, the things that I do is staying with a heart full of gratitude for whatever comes my way. It could be the hardest situation, but my dad passing away, I found so many things to have gratitude for, to be thankful for, and it changed my entire energy around his passing, and which changed my experience in the process. And rather than deep mourning, even though I mean, good God, I watched a video yesterday and I snot cried, and it's been a year, but the experience has been beautiful rather than difficult. Um, Having that gratitude, surrounding myself with people, like we talk about community is such a vital tool. Surrounding myself with amazing human beings, and the other thing is my dogs. I wake up every morning. People are like, "What do you do? What's your meditation? What's your man?" I literally first 30 minutes of my day is spent with my animals loving me and just connecting on a deep level. Um, and so those are three major things that I do every single day. When I first wake up, it is the dogs, and of course Edgar, my partner of 18 years. But those dogs are the center, our babies, and having gratitude and the people I surround myself with.
yeah, dude, we were on a Zoom call one time, just you and I chatting, catching up, and you were out by the pool, and the whole entire call was us chatting, and then you trying to make sure the dog didn't jump in the pool, and then the dog jumped in the pool, which
Yeah.
which is the greatest. You're like, don't do it, and then all of a sudden you just went, she jumped in the pool, and so, dude, I love your love for your dogs. Like, if people follow you on social, they pop up often, especially on Facebook. And you know what's it's so funny because there are so many people that will give you the exact prescription that they feel will help you. Meditate 40 minutes a day, do an hour and a half of exercise and then do a cold plunge and then get in the sauna for 25 minutes. Make sure you say your affirmations before you go to bed and say your affirmations when you wake up. I don't think that there's one prescription for everybody, right? And I think you and I are great examples of that. Like I have my routines, I have my non-negotiables every single day, but they're tweaked every single day, right? Meditation isn't always me sitting in silence for 20 minutes trying to dive into whatever subconscious I have going on. Like for me, it can be that alone time of having a cigar. For you, it's you with your dogs. It is different for everybody, but it's about finding that peace and that happiness in your life every single day, right? Like I have a very like I don't use the term happiness when I talk about my definition of success, but really when you break it down, that's what it is, right? To do what I want when I want with whom I want, which is ultimately happiness.
Yeah.
And it's also that balance in those four things that you said: mind, body, spirit, and finances. And so I love that definition. And I know people are listening to this going, no wonder they're friends. Like there's so many similarities in the way that we think and we approach life. So I want to ask you a question here as we're talking about the great big things that life brings to us, right? Death and grief and all the things in between. So I want to ask you, when you are at the end of your life and you're about to take your last breath, I want you to pretend that everything you've created is no longer on this planet. The rock stars you've created, they don't exist. The book you wrote, that doesn't exist. Now, the beautiful thing is they're going to live forever. But let's pretend that they don't. And at the end of your life, you can only be remembered for one sentence. What would you like that sentence to be?
Oof. Um, well, I kind of call this the hook of your brand. Is when somebody experiences you, how do you want them to feel? I want you to feel seen, heard, and valued. And that's what I want people to remember me by.
I love it, dude. And you do that. When I announced you as a speaker at the summit for this year, like Lisa, who's in the mastermind, who got to spend that weekend with you in Chicago, was like, oh my God, I can't wait to see you. Like when people meet you, they want to be in your space forever. And you truly carry that energy in every single thing that you do, which is such a beautiful thing. So let's get to the important part of this conversation. Unleash your rock star. How do people find it? How do they get it? How do they get into your sphere? How do they start working with you? What's all the details?
Well, of course, you can put the link number one to get the book. I've got an offer going on right now. You can get the book for free. You pay for shipping and handling, you get it for free. And then there's the workbook. Man, I told you, like in our little pre-convo, that I've never been able to write down all the things. Talking about the happiness part, I've got this thing called the Rockstar Success Map that I created on how to be happy in every single one of those areas and how to be successful in those. But the workbook is, whew, it's powerful. And the app. So if you go to, you can get the app on Google, Android, but it's Unleash Your Rockstar. You can download it for your Apple or Android. But also social media, man. We're always on social. But it's a great place to start. Jonathan George, and if people are truly wanting to take their personal brand, understand it, be able to package it, and be able to expand it into the world. I don't know of anybody else that's doing what we're doing over here from our perspective of creating truly authentic rock stars in life. So just jump in, love to connect with you and help build you to that next level.
Guys, make sure you get the workbook. You guys know that, like, really what we're talking about here is overcoming your limiting beliefs in order to create that rock star lifestyle. And it only begins with you being able to do the work to overcome, right? So I have 3 steps to overcome any limiting belief. And the first thing is getting uncomfortable, right? Committing to buying that book and doing the work. Second thing is surrounding yourself with the right people. Connect with Jonathan. He will support you in that process. And number 3, take action, because nothing works unless you do. And that workbook will make sure you put in that work. So make sure you guys go grab that workbook. So, Jonathan, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. And I'm curious to know if there's an evolution in this answer, since I did definitely ask you 272. So that question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
There's so many, so many. Uh, I would say, whew, um, saying yes to myself, number one. I and I don't know if you want a story, but 7 years ago, I was in the entertainment world and just kind of burned out. Just felt like I wasn't really fulfilling my call in life and fulfilling the purpose that I have, working with just a handful of people. And I was like, I know there's so much more. And a friend of mine had a mastermind, and it was 10,000 to go. And I never spent, since college, I haven't spent a penny on myself,
Yeah.
and I was like, a mastermind? What's a mastermind? I never even heard, even though I want you to come join my classes and my groups and all the trainings and stuff, but I'd never heard of a mastermind. And so I joined that mastermind, paid $10,000, went to Bali, and I got there and they asked a question. It's like, what is it that you feel like you're really supposed to be doing? What's holding you back from doing those things, um, and so I was so mad. I was like, I cannot believe I paid $10,000 for something I take people through. But as I began to do those things and speak them out loud, I will never forget that them asking, "What do you need to do today to make those things happen?" And I was saying yes to myself. I
Mm.
said yes to being here. I'm saying yes to all that the universe has for me, what God has for me, what is supposed to happen. And when I tell you, when I spoke those words out loud in front of this group of very successful women, I was the only guy that was there. I was so embarrassed because I was snot crying. I was like, and I broke down and just had not cried like that, or I had a rebirthing. And so I would just have to say that the power, and that has been, that saying yes to those moments has completely brought me to a totally different place. I launched Unleash Your Rockstar, the agency, became a #1 international bestseller. I'm speaking, I've spoken on nearly 300 stages at this point, and we've created a program for schools called Rock My Campus, which is teaching personal branding in schools. So the power is in the yes. If you
I
want
love
true
it.
growth, you've got to say yes.
I love it, man. And it's a testament to the greatest coaches have great coaches. And so you investing in yourself has gotten you to the place where you can serve at an even deeper level. But Jonathan, thank you so much for coming back on the show and sharing this with my audience. And most importantly, thank you so much for your friendship, man. I truly do appreciate it. I'm so glad we met. However many, I need to look it up, like what year it was, because it might have been during COVID. Was it 2020, maybe 2019, something like that?
It was 2018, I think 2018 or 2019 when I first started like speaking. I was like, I'm going to be a speaker. I want to speak on stages, and so I invested, man, and that's how I found you, and it's just been a true blessing every step of the way.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you.
All right.